Welcome back for the session 6 of the MARRES Symposium. Voilà. The session 6 with the Blue Manager students. Session 6 will be mostly on fisheries and communities. So the jury will be with Jean-Vincent Vieux-Ingrassa from the Metropolis Côte d'Azur, Christelle Moreno, Université Côte d'Azur, of course, and Florence Lacrosse, Thomas Crieste, and Nature Dive. Thank you, Florence, to be online. The reviewers of your reports were Jean-Vincent, Emna Benlami from Ecosis Université Côte d'Azur, Florent Favier, the consultant at Catalyse, Florence Lacrosse, I'll say it again, Louisa Mangalagio, professor at Université Côte d'Azur Ecosis, and Juliette Armeni from Polymer Méditerranée. We will start with Pierre, Pierre Guilbert first. I see you're ready. And then we will continue with Justine, Jessica, and Hasan. We'll have a break between Justine and Jessica. Florence, you're all good already for being part of the jury with us? Yes. So let's go also with Pierre. Bonjour, Pierre.
Bonjour. Hello.
Very good. You're already sharing your screen. So you have the next 15 minutes. You're ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
So you can go.
So, okay. Hello everybody, and we will speak now about sustainable aquatic food because it was really the main topic of my work placement this year. Now, starting with some element of context about the German Development Corporation, GIZ, which is the organization I did my work placement, the global program, so the project I worked on, sustainable aquatic food, and then some element on objectives of the assignment, achievement, tasks, and lessons learned. So first, the German Development Cooperation. In Germany, there is a own ministry in charge of development cooperation. It's not integrated in the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, for example. You see the logo here. And the ministry finances and mandates organizations to implement development cooperation projects. One of them is GIZ. GIZ is a state-owned enterprise of the German government, which works on behalf of German ministry, on behalf of European Union and other potential donor and commissioning parties in the field of international cooperation for sustainable development, with the business volume of 4 billion euros, 25,000 employees in 120 countries, and with very various fields of sector expertise, including marine resources, fisheries, but not only, of course. The GIZ is implementing different kind of projects. The very typical projects are so-called bilateral projects, where both governments, the German government and government of partner government from African countries or other continent development cooperation country agree on a project, and then it's one country project. But there are also another kind of projects, so-called global programs, which are mandated by the German government for working in different countries on one topic or one issue. And the program I worked for is a global program. It's a global program, Sustainable Aquatic Food, with 5 years duration, 2024 to 2028, 28 million euro budget from BMZ, so from the German government and from the European Union, implemented by a steering unit in Germany, and some country teams in different countries. And you see here the different countries. In Uganda, with the view of reaching 3,500 fish farms. I will come back to the objectives and activities. Later in Zambia, in Malawi, in Madagascar, these 4 countries with a focus on aquaculture. But also with a regional component with the Southern African Development Community, which is a regional organization like EU, if you want, but for Southern Africa, and not so integrated, not so sophisticated like EU. And we work with SADC at policy level on marine fisheries. And we have now developed a new project in the framework of this program, one can say, a new action, together with EU Commission for the Benguela Current region, so South Africa, Namibia, and Angola. Which the new project, the new action, has a stronger focus on biodiversity, marine resources, livelihood, and also, which is included, of course, also fisheries aspect, with 11 million euro and 1 million BMZ, which is this 12 million euro are part of the 28 I mentioned. That's the context of the program, the general context. But I mean, briefly on the objectives of this program, in the initial plan, the objective was formulated as follows. Small-scale producers of sustainable aquatic food have successfully contributed to the transformation of food systems. So it's really strong focus on small-scale producers. It's really small-scale aquaculture producers, for example, villagers, which has very small ponds near the house segments. Some speak about backyard ponds. So it's really backyard aquaculture production for villagers, farmers, which are in general are also another kind of production, agricultural production. So a strong focus on transformation of food system in the sense of better food security, better nutrition with more protein for the local people where it's produced. This objective will be achieved through 3 outputs. So the first output on production, so really growth, production growth in aquaculture, for 17,000 producers with objectives, the indicator of achieving 30% growth, but also to develop innovative solutions and to publish innovative solutions, in particular for a more climate resilient aquaculture. The second output on inclusion in the sense of economic inclusion, in order to better integrate this small-scale producer in formal value chains, but also inclusion in the sense of political inclusion, political participation of fisheries organization, small-scale fisheries organization, of course, in policy-making processes. And the third output on regulation in the sense of environmental regulation, on cage aquaculture, and also on fisheries control surveillance at regional level. That was the initial plan, and it's still relevant for the program, but now this new program I've mentioned comes also with its own objective and goal, because this new action, I've mentioned. So in addition to these outputs, we will have an additional action aiming at integrated conservation and sustainable use of marine resources in the 3 countries, South Africa, Namibia, Angola, together with Southern African Development Community, but in particular together with the Benguela Current Convention, which is a regional organization in these 3 countries focusing on sustainable conservation and sustainable use of the Benguela Current large marine ecosystems, and of course together with the ministries of the 3 countries. It will contribute to food security and nutrition, livelihood, poverty reduction, and of course biodiversity. It's a way of this new action. It's a way of strengthening the environmental dimension of the global program in the sense of a socio-ecological transformation of food systems. So now what I did and what I am doing, the assignment itself. So the assignment is as the head of the global program, Sustainable Aquatic Food, which means that I have to give guidance, conceptual orientations, and ensure strategic development of the program, including mobilization of additional resources, ensure technical quality of the program approach and activities, dialogue with the German ministry in charge of development cooperation, so the commissioning party, the donor, partnership development, networking and technical exchange with other international actors, but also, of course, to coordinate the different country teams to ensure mutual learning among the country teams and also with the other GIZ projects or projects from other organizations, team management, and of course, administration and budget implementation. What the achievement in these 3 months, I can say, I think the program is now ready for implementation. So the program started in January in formal way, but I've started in March, and we really start with preparatory activities in March this year. And such a program has a relatively long inception phase, so preparation activities. And we are, in a way, we are still in this preparatory phase, but now the activities can start, at least in some countries. In Madagascar, in Malawi, we are ready to start. In Zambia and Uganda, we need sometimes more for different reasons. But we are progressing in this sense. The second achievement is to position the program as a relevant actor to support regional fishery policy processes in the region, in Southern Africa. Considering the local activities on aquaculture, we can build very strongly on previous projects, previous activities from the German Development Cooperation. But this fisheries policy processes in this region, in Southern Africa, it's quite new. It's a new area for GIZ. So we had first to establish cooperation, to understand what are the actors, how they work, what are the dynamics, but also to position and to be visible as a program and as an actor for the other actors. And that's we did, I think we are now known by most of the actors in the region. And third achievement is the development of this new action, which is very time-consuming, together with the European Union, on conservation and sustainable use of the Benguela current large marine ecosystem. So this is still work in progress. We are still, as I said, in the preparatory phase, and it will continue, of course, in the next months and also in the next years until 2028 for the implementation then. So that's how I did it, which kind of tasks every day. So one important task, of course, is staff recruitment, so to have teams working. So for my part, I was strongly involved in the recruitment, and I led the recruitment of an aquaculture expert in the headquarters. A real aquaculture experts, I can say, with a very large experience in different countries, in different kind of aquaculture, which is very important for the program. Also, the Uganda team leader. It's still in process for Madagascar and Malawi. The team leaders were already there, so no need for recruitment. An international climate expert in Malawi, which she will work for Malawi, but also in more general way for the entire program. Because, as I said, we have the ambition to develop innovation, new solutions for a more climate resilient aquaculture in this context. And of course, she can build on a lot of things which has been done by different organizations, but there is still a need for specific solution, tailor-made solutions for this kind of aquaculture in this kind of countries, in the very village level. Finance manager in the headquarters has been recruited, and also I supported team leaders in the countries for the recruitment. Strategy and planning, an important part of the work. We did a strategy workshop in Malawi with the country team leaders in order to develop common understanding of the program, of the objectives, and also to define the contribution from the different country teams to the overall objectives and indicators of the program. And of course, I supported also the activity planning by country and budget planning. Cooperation with key stakeholders, I spoke about it. It was important, in particular in this area of regional fisheries policy. I took part and presented the project in the so-called SADC Technical Committee on Fisheries, which is one instrument of the SADC Protocol on Fisheries, which is a regional treaty on fisheries management. And the Technical Committee on Fisheries is a formal gathering of member states of the Protocol on Fisheries at director level. I took part also to the Africa Small Scale Fisheries Summit in Tanzania in Dar es Salaam in June, which was at the occasion of the 10 years of the FAO voluntary guidelines on small scale fisheries, with the objective the objective of the summit was to strengthen the Africa voice on this topic at international level, and also to create momentum for the implementation of this FAO voluntary guidelines. For me, it was in particular the occasion of, as I said, positioning the program, seeing the actors, meeting people, networking. Cooperation between the national teams and the national partners, so the ministries in the different countries, is of course very important for the program. It's done by the country teams, but I've supported that, and also I was in charge of the communication with the German ministry in charge of development cooperation. Internal processes are also very important. Monitoring, team meeting, bilateral meeting. But also we will not do everything by ourselves. We will work with service providers and implementation partners, so international, national NGOs, and this new EU project, very time consuming, as I said. The learning phase, so I've learned a lot in these 3 months on management, of course. I used to work on one country project, and now it's a global program with different countries, so it's a new setup for me. I learned on EU process and also on internal procedures and also on content. I've been working for the same organization, for the GIZ, the German Development Cooperation, for 20 years now, but I was working in the water sector, so fresh water, access to drinking water, wastewater, also water resource management. And now, thanks to MARRES, I can work on marine resources, fisheries, aquaculture. So I've learned a lot on the small-scale aquaculture, regional fisheries policies, with a focus on institutional setup, institutional policy aspects, management aspects. And now it's time to say thank you. Thank you for the 15 minutes you heard. So thank you for all the year and all the learning.
Yeah. Big applause from the large crowd in the room and online, as I can see. So let's start with questions. Really, thank you for your presentation. We can start with you, maybe Florence, as you're online. And we will go with you.
Yeah, thank you, Pierre, for your presentation. I'm quite curious, since you had the chance to work in various different countries, did you experience different or similar challenges in implementing the program across these countries?
Yes, thank you. The answer is no. Yes, of course, we had different challenges, which is related to the different situations in the countries, from the institutional aspects and also the situation, but also which is very related to the situation of the German Development Cooperation and the past activities, the previous activities of the German Development Cooperation in these countries. And for me, this was the main factor explaining the difference for my work and the different aspects. So as I said, in Madagascar and Malawi, we can really build on previous activities on aquaculture. In Uganda, we had some activities, but much more on fisheries. And now we'll start with aquaculture. So we have to rethink, to reorient the activities, the teams, where we work, the partners. So that's quite a different situation. But coming back on the situation, what we do and what is the situation in the countries, it's also to some extent, it's different kind of aquaculture. In the Madagascar, in the Haute Terre, so in the central part of Madagascar, we support wise fish culture. So which is within the fish production, within the wise, within the rizière, the wise pit, which is a very different way of aquaculture production compared to ponds, the normal ponds like in Malawi. So to some extent, this has really different kind of activities and also different institutional setup from the national aspect, and different experience from GIZ, from the German Development Corporation.
Yeah. And as you were saying, you had to reorganize differently according to the stakeholders. Was there any lessons learned from certain countries that could be reused for stakeholders, even if they were different and in a different context of fisheries, or was it always adapted to the local situation?
That we really try to have this kind of lessons learned and experience sharing, because I think it's one of the value added of such a program compared to one country programs, and people are very keen to share. GIZ teams, but also the stakeholders, the partners, they are really keen to learn about what happens in other countries. So, for example, I see a very high potential of sharing from Malawi to Uganda. The situations are relatively similar, and so we can transfer some training. So, for example, a training manual, training concepts from Malawi to Uganda. One of them is the so-called Aquaculture Business School, which is not a technical training, but it's a setup of much more business, financial training for the very small-scale producers, so that they can learn not only the technical aspect of aquaculture, but also how managing this kind of very small enterprises. And this concept we can transfer from Malawi to Uganda, for example.
Okay, great. Thanks, Pierre. I think, Christophe, I have another question, but I think it might be time to pass on. I don't know.
I think you have time for one more question.
Okay, great. Thanks.
A short answer, Pierre.
Okay, I will try.
Challenge.
Yeah. Just another curious point. You mentioned at one point the climate resilient aquaculture with one of the partners or colleagues you're working with. Do you have more details as to how you can define a climate resilient aquaculture system?
Yes, as to define what is climate resilient aquaculture, I would say it's an aquaculture where it can ensure continuous production, also in the context of higher viability of resources, in particular of water resources. And we see it now very concretely. In Zambia, for example, there is a strong drought currently in the context of El Nino, so we'll see the need of that. And to be more technical, one very short point, one aspect is really watershed management. So in Madagascar, we had a study on that, watershed management to reduce sedimentation, because it's one of the risks related to climate change for the agricultural plants.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, let's go for you, Jean-Vincent.
Thank you for this presentation. My first question was about if you had the opportunity to go there in this country or one of these countries to see on the field directly.
Yes. Yes, I went to Malawi. I had the opportunity to go there in Malawi. So in Malawi, we had also a lot of meetings and so on, but I had the opportunity to go there to meet people, so fish farmers, and to see the ponds and how it works. And I went also to Tanzania, but in Tanzania it was only, we have no activities on the field in Tanzania. It was only in the context of a regional conference. And I will go, it's scheduled that I go to Uganda in October, and then Madagascar in March.
So were you able to talk with the population, to have feedbacks about the project, the conservation management, etc.?
Yes, I talk. So I cannot say I had a really comprehensive talks with different kinds of stakeholders and persons involved and so on. But yes, I talked with people involved in the aquaculture farms, in the village where we were in Malawi, with different people. There is a kind of cooperative working on this fund from the village. So I talked with the president and president of the cooperative, so the farmer, which is much more in lead, and other people. And I spoke also with some women involved in the cooperative. there is a kind of gender bias in the division of labor. So the women which were more focusing on processing and selling the fish. And they were, and in general, the feedback were very positive, because for them it's an additional resource, it's additional incomes.
Okay, and my last question, it's about the. Do you have some metrics to measure the effectiveness of each project in each country or a global program or etc.?
Yeah. Yes, we have some indicators. The key indicators for this program are about production, aquaculture production. So we have to identify 17,000 fish farms, and to monitor the production each year of these fish farms in order to increase by 30%. That's the key point. And we have other aspects, other indicators which are more quality.
Yeah, I thought about. I think about the environmental impact of each fish farmer also, and you have an idea of the environmental impact to put all these fish farm in this country.
Yeah. Yes. No. Thank you. I've not heard the environmental aspect, but yes. No. So we have no metrics for continuous monitoring of each fish farm on the environmental aspect. But the environmental aspects are very important for the program in the way we support aquaculture at two levels. The first level is the technical trainings does not, and all the support we deliver goes in the direction of a sustainable aquaculture. So there is no chemical inputs. There is no. Indeed, there is also no imported feeds. It's only local things. And in the identification of the aquaculture fish farm, we also look at the availability of water resources and other resources. So that's one of the aspects. And the other aspect is really to work with the national ministries in the different countries on environmental standards for cage aquaculture, to develop criteria for that. But so far, there are no countries.
Okay.
Okay, Pierre, thank you. So we can go to you, Christelle.
Yeah. Perhaps a little question, because so I know it's focusing on small scale fisheries. Do you have also an overview of what is in place in this type of country on large scale fisheries, and like how they also try to work with that on this country? I guess it's perhaps maybe difficult sometimes.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. There is a willingness, at least a willingness, to develop also large-scale fisheries, large-scale aquaculture in the countries. In Madagascar, that's very clear. That there are a development plan on that. So that's yes, in Uganda too, they are working on larger scale fisheries and aquaculture on the Lake Victoria, the Victoria Lake, and it's sometimes it's quite different aspects, and there is no relationship. But as you said, sometimes it's really an issue of diverging interest between large scale and small scale. And it's one of the aspects we try to work on with multi-stakeholder platforms at national level, so that all the stakeholders can gather together and address the issues in a way that each one has a voice in the decision-making process.
Cool. And perhaps a question, more like personal level for you, but it's like, what were the main challenge you had to face in this 3 months? Because you presented so much different stuff, multitasking everywhere. So what are the main challenge perhaps you had to face, and perhaps you can already see yourself facing in the next couple of months, years, because I know it's a long-term project.
Yes. One of the challenges is also one of the risks I've mentioned during the initial plan. It's really the internal procedure. So GIZ is a very regulated organization, as a public law, state-owned organization with a lot of regulation on each procedure, each processes. And sometimes it makes some aspects of the work more difficult. For example, I spoke about Angola. There is no GIZ country office in Angola. And so far, we are struggling to find how we can really have some procurement activities in Angola. The headquarters say no, they are not in charge. And there is no country office from GIZ. And the country office in charge, which is from Mozambique, say no, we are not really in charge, not able. So that's one of the particular questions. And this kind of issue will be a challenge, of course. I see another challenge on how ensuring that all these different activities within the program are linked in a way, because we are working with very different kind of activities. Small-scale aquaculture in one country and regional fishery policy on the other hand, how it can be one program. That's also one of the questions I have to currently.
Thank you.
Yeah. So on my side, so I'm not part of the graders, but I'm of course interested about what you are doing. You talked already about the fact that of course, you travel on site to learn from these places. I maybe have two questions about. You talked about the fact that you talked with them. Maybe could we enter into more the effect of surprise? Like I remember, for example, you visited an aquaculture farm, a small one here in the region. What were your surprises when you're on site? What are the things that surprised you the most compared to what you were expecting? Maybe there were no surprise.
Yes, I was surprised in this village. It's one village, and it's not really representative, but I was surprised by the relatively high level of organization by the farmers. It's about 20 people working together on this point. There are different villagers, different farmers. They are organized as a cooperative, and they were quite confident in and of course there is every day something to do. So you really need a quite strong organization within this group to ensure that it works. And some activities has to do really at the right way, at the right day. And they had no other very limited formalized organization, but they were quite well organized and very confident in their capacity to keep in with this organization. This was for me one of the surprises.
Okay. Florence, do you have another question? You often have additional questions you keep on the site.
That's right. I usually do. I have a blank right now, but I'll come up with something.
We do have a question from the audience.
Go for it.
I don't know if they can hear.
Can you hear me, Pierre?
To some extent, but we can try.
I'll yell very loud.
But, can you just stand on closer to the microphone?
Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you, Pierre. It was a super cool presentation. I was wondering, because I mean, it's getting really popular, that if there's any way that indigenous knowledge, because I mean, the region you have has such a diverse cultural footprint, if these native knowledge can kind of be implemented in the project, because I can imagine the project can also learn probably a lot from the local people there as well.
That was
Yes.
Joran.
Yes, thank you, Johan. It's very nice to hear from you, Johan. And indeed, it's yes, it's a very important aspect. And yes, it's possible to learn a lot from indigenous knowledge from different aspects. Okay, I will try to be short, but 3 points. First point, the non-aquacultural aspect. I spoke about organization, the link with other agricultural production and so on. That's where we rely very entirely, I would say almost entirely, on indigenous and local knowledge. The second aspect is on aquaculture itself. It's not that easy. Sometimes yes, but sometimes it's really new. Now we are starting in Madagascar in a new region where there is almost no aquaculture so far, and we will develop, I think, 2,000 aquaculture farms. So the technical aquacultural knowledge is then very limited in that aspect. And the third one is not only on aquaculture, but on conservation activities. The new action will start now with the EU in the Benguela Current. It's a lot of conservation area, marine protected area, but also other area-based effective conservation measures, as it said. And for this kind of thing, it's very important to have the local knowledge, and also on fisheries. So the local fishers are the people having the knowledge on the local fish stocks, and we will really rely on that. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Florence. Go ahead.
Yeah, can I just bounce off of that? That was a great question from Johan. Just wondering about that knowledge you were saying that it's really important to integrate the local knowledge. How would you go about collecting it and making sure that their voices are heard, the local populations?
Oh yes, so it's really one of the main question. How to ensure that their voices are heard. We work at different level, but I will take the regional level, South African part. So we have the ambition that 10 small-scale fisheries organization can contribute to political processes, policy-making processes at regional level. But currently, the policy processes are only state-focused, so there is only state actors and public actors, or some private actors, but very large one. So we will agree, we are trying now to agree with the Southern African Development Community to develop new policy format, dialogue format, back to the technical committees, which is the decision-making and the formal meetings on fisheries policy, common fisheries policy in the region, to have some kind of dialogue formats with small fisheries or small-scale fisheries organization and decision makers together. And
Okay, great.
so that's new format, and we will also support this small-scale fisheries organization with training on advocacy and so on.
Cool. So they'll be directly involved in designing the policies. Great.
No, in dialogue before designing the.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Pierre.
Thank you, Florence. Thank you, Pierre and Johan. Pierre, just to tell you that students are still here following and people around, so you will see some comments. It was some encouragement and then some congratulations. Thank you, Nicole, Luz, Erika, people, Nichel, Floran, Isaac, Victoria, and again, Nicole, Marco, Katerina. So thank you guys to still be here this morning to encourage our students. Merci, Pierre.
Merci.
Congratulations again. Enjoy this fantastic experience that you're doing. Really, it's amazing. So we'll continue with Justine. Hello, Justine. You're just here.
Hello.
Are you ready, Justine? Would you like to start
Yes.
introducing your topic before your first slides?
Yes, of course. Do you see the screen?
Yeah, we see it. Just if you want to say a few words before you start.
Okay, so basically I'll be presenting my results of a work placement that I've done with BirdLife Malta as a marine policy officer. I've started the contract in March, and this will be extended for 2 years.
Okay, good, fancy, very happy. You're ready.
Okay.
Let's go. You have the next 15 minutes. You have the floor.
Okay. So we'll start with the context and
I'm sorry to cut you. What we see is a PowerPoint window and not the full screen slide. I don't know if. Are you using two screens?
no, I'm not, but okay. I will share my entire screen. I think it's easier like this. Do you see the full screen?
Yes, we do. Allez, here we go.
Nice.
Full start.
Okay. So just a bit of a flow of my presentation. I start with the context, going into the goals, the team I've worked with and stakeholders, the results, financial aspects, risk management, and continuation of my duties. So just to put you a little bit of context, the seabirds are top or mesopredators of the marine ecosystems. Their long-term monitoring on distribution and size of colonies, meaning their numbers on land, is important for detecting any changes in the marine environment. Therefore, they're considered as vital bioindicators. They're also known as central-based foragers, where they move from their colonies on land into the water for foraging during the day, and during the night, they return to their colonies on land to avoid predators. The Mediterranean seabird community is quite a simplified one with few species diversity and low population abundance. However, there's a lot of endemism. Unfortunately, all of the seabirds, they face a lot of threats in the Mediterranean because of intense human activities. There are 3 seabirds which breed in the Maltese Islands, 2 species of shearwaters, and the storm petrel. We'll mostly be focusing on these 2 species of seabirds because they're the current focus of the project at BirdLife Malta. By the way, the Alcoin shearwater is endemic within the Mediterranean basin, and the storm petrel is a subpopulation of the European species. These seabirds, they face several threats on the Maltese Islands, but also in other Mediterranean countries, including light pollution, rat predation, because they predate on the eggs, and fishery bycatch. The seabirds, they breed in cliffs around the island, in small crevices and caves around the island, and 2 of the most important sites are one in the north and one in the south, in especially Filfla, which is a really, really tiny islet, only 0.06 kilometers squared, which holds 50% of the Mediterranean population of the storm petrel. Therefore, conservation actions in this site is very important. BirdLife Malta started studying seabirds since the 1960s by ringing storm petrels on Filfla, and so far they've completed 3 live projects focused only on seabirds. The role of the Marine Policy Officer is to support the EU Life Seabirds projects, the current ones, through policy development, stakeholder engagement, and on-field assistance. There are 2 current projects on seabirds, Life Pampophonos, in which we are the lead partners, and it focuses on the Alcuin shearwater, and Life Tetide, which focuses on the Alcuin and the storm petrel. The Life Pampophonos focuses also on fisheries bycatch to reduce fishery bycatch of the Alcuin, whilst Life Tetide only on reducing rat predation. I've divided my work placement into 2 primary goals and 2 secondary goals. The primary goals are more concerned with fisheries, and the secondary are more broad in the sense that I assisted in fieldwork activities and participated in public events. The main people that I've communicated with were the head of conservation and the project manager, Mania Russo. The project manager is also the project manager of Life Pampophonos, which is, as I said, we are the lead partners. The project coordinator was Martin, who has been working over 7 years, and I've also worked with the project wardens, who their role is to execute the conservation actions of the LIFE projects. Various stakeholders involved. The most important were my team, because I collaborated very closely with them, and also the fishers were very important because without them we couldn't collect the data on fisheries bycatch. And in the future, which will be continued even after the end of this placement. Also, the Department of Fisheries was an important stakeholder because it is also a partner of Life Pemphigophilus. So primary goal 1 was to develop a position paper in response to a new fisheries control regulation, which entered into force in January 2024. Through this regulation, a lot of new changes will occur in fisheries control. However, the one we're mostly concerned with is obviously that it will improve the reporting system for seabird bycatch. So we developed this position paper in order to express concerns to the responsible entity, the Department of Fisheries, and also to suggest potential solutions. I've managed to finalize the draft of the position paper quite early in my workplace. However, it's still being reviewed, and this is a risk that I didn't foresee, an actual fact, because when so many people need to review something, it takes long, and sometimes other priorities take over. We didn't have a clear deadline when we need to publish it, but we're hoping by the end of June it will be put on our website and communicated to the department. So just to communicate some of the results of the position paper, basically we've provided comments and recommendations according to the changes. One of the main changes is the installation of a vessel monitoring system on all fishing vessels by 2030. So far, it's only required for vessels over 12 meters long. We stress that we need more rigorous management plans of MPAs. Unfortunately, in Malta, we have a lot of MPAs. However, they're very poorly managed. We also hope that there will be more reliable data for maritime spatial planning because it's still being in review in Malta and it's not finalized. And also finally to provide more information on the overlap with marine SPAs of seabirds. Another change is the installation of an electronic reporting system, meaning an e-logbook on all vessels starting from 2028. We stress that there needs to be more control and inspection of the e-logbooks to make sure they're being filled in properly and also to give sufficient training to the fishers. Because what's been happening so far, the department is already giving tablets to the fishers. However, some of the fishers, unfortunately, they don't have the capacity to use these tablets because they don't know how to read and write. So it is an issue. And finally, to involve the fishers in the implementation, because so far from the conversations I have with fishers, is that they see them as the enemy, the department. Another change is to include the details on any lost gear in the water. Again, we stress the importance of educating fishers in order to inform mitigation strategies and reduce such incidences. And finally, one of the changes that mostly concerns us is that an electronic record of bycatch of sensitive species will be included in the e-logbook. As BirdLife Malta, we are advocating for mandated mitigation strategies for fishers through national legislation because we believe that the only way how to achieve a change in the reduction of bycatch is through national legislation. Again, we focus on educating the fishers to identify the species and how they can use the mitigation measures, and finally to increase onboard observations by trained observers because this is the only way how we can collect reliable data. Another result, which is related to policy that I didn't foresee in my objectives, is that we provided comments on an environmental report for Malta's national policy for the development of offshore renewable energy. In Malta, we don't have any offshore renewables yet. However, through the report, they've identified 6 areas where this can be developed. We've criticized a lot this report because it lacked a lot of robust data, especially when it comes to seabirds. There were incomplete seabird assessments. In the bottom right corner, we can see a risk assessment that BirdLife has done in the previous years, and this we communicated to the authorities before the report. However, it was not included in the report, so we criticized them a lot because of this. Other policy-related results that I've done, I've produced 2 objections for destructive development across the island. Unfortunately, in Malta, we have a lot of construction going on everywhere, especially in seaside towns. They're very touristic, but they coincide also with SPAs of Skopelis and Yalkuin. And here we are mostly concerned with intensified light and noise pollution. Light pollution is becoming a very big issue because they attract the fledglings and they cause them to ground. So through this goal, I familiarized myself with an important regulation on fisheries control. I'm learning a lot on national and international marine environmental law and developing critical evaluation skills. And also, I'm helping BirdLife Malta in developing detailed briefs and papers to relevant policy areas and assisting the head of conservation in formulating our position. Moving on to the primary goal 2, which was to quantify fisheries bycatch of seabirds and implement mitigation measures onto drifting long lines through questionnaire with fishers, onboard observation, or logbook data if onboards are not achieved. The mitigation measure we're pushing for is a scary bird device, which is basically an aerial visual deterrent, which reduces seabird interactions and which has been widely accepted by fishers already in Portugal. In April and May, there was sustained bad weather conditions, so this delayed a lot the start of onboards, and also some fishers were reluctant to invite me on board, let's say. But so far, I've already done 2 onboards, and this will be continued together with the live Pemphufunus continuation of the project. So in total, I've went 7 times to the fishing village, where I've initiated contact with 5 fishers, completed 4 questionnaires, and done 2 onboards. So through the questionnaires, we mainly collect data on the gear specifications, mostly long lines, because they're the ones which cause the most bycatch. And we've also collected data on bycatch. Scopolis bycatch was reported by all fishers, Yalkuin by only 1 fisher. Interestingly, 2 fishers devised their own mitigation measures to reduce seabird interaction, which is a simple nylon rope with a floating ball. And other bycatch reported were sharks, a lot of turtles, and a gannet. The onboards were both done in the southwest of Malta. During the onboards, I've used a tablet to collect the data, and the data collected included effort watches every 30 minutes, seabird interactions every 15 minutes, and seabird dives every 3 minutes, so it was constant collection of data. During the first onboard, I had interactions with scopolis and storm petrels, but no bycatch. And during the second onboard, I had interaction with all the seabirds, and we had bycatch of 2 sea turtles. It was quite shocking to come face to face with the reality of bycatch. By the way, both sea turtles were released alive. The fishermen released the hook, and I took the photos with their permission. Through this goal, I've learned how to initiate contact with fishers, which was I was quite intimidated in the beginning to do so. I've changed a lot my perception on fishers, and I'm gaining insights into their needs and concerns. And I'm learning on their experiences and knowledge. What I'm doing is beneficial for live Pemphufunus objectives, which is to quantify seabird bycatch, and also they lacked someone which can speak the same language of the fishers. Moving on to the secondary goals, they were more easy to achieve, let's say, and I've achieved them successfully, and I will continue to work on these goals even after the end of this work placement. As for secondary goal 1, which was focused to assist on fieldwork sessions, I completed 7 fieldwork sessions, where during the fieldwork we monitor for rodents' level of consumption of non-toxic blocks. We check for the signs, for any rodent signs, because rodents, well, they're the biggest threat on land because they predate on the eggs. Checking also mechanical traps. And also I've assisted in capture microcapture, where basically we stay in front of the nest, we wait for the shearwaters to return to the colonies, we catch them, weigh them, and check for the rings. Through this goal, I've learned a lot of the challenges of field data collection of seabirds, sometimes going in very small spaces, small holes. However, this ignited a passion for me for advocating more for reduction of threats through policy. As for the secondary goal 2, for participation in public events, I've participated in 2 public events. And during the events, I've realized that there is a big lack of awareness on seabirds that breed in Malta. However, this motivated me more to raise more awareness, participate more in public events, and communicate to people how we can reduce their threats. So to execute all these goals, let's say in total, it would take around 30,000 euros for these past 3 months. The biggest cost is in relation to the field work, because it needs the use of a boat. I did a rope access course. You need a lot of climbing equipment, rodent baits. However, it's good to note as well that these were already purchased by BirdLife, and they've been in use for quite a number of years. Also for the collecting quantification of bycatch, I've used the tablet, fisheries goodies, and also we're giving compensation for the fishers for allowing us to stay on board. As for risk management, a lot of risks were envisaged. The ones most critical were concerned mostly with the fishers. because there's a big probability they don't accept you to go on board, or they're reluctant to speak. Sustained bad weather conditions was also a big risk. But in order to mitigate the risk for fishers, I carefully planned my initial first contact. As an alternative to onboards, we have logbooks, which I didn't use yet, and these logbooks can be filled in by the fishers themselves. And I've maintained an open communication channel with the fishers through WhatsApp, calling them, or sending messages, depending on what they prefer. So finally, for my continuation of duties, I will continue to work on the seabird bycatch data. Well, so far I haven't achieved a lot, let's say, but it's not an easy task because it requires a lot of communication with the fishermen and gaining their trust. I will continue to assist in public events. I'm being involved in the funding application of a new life project, which will be focused on bycatch only. And I will also attend the BirdLife International Training and Seabird Conference abroad in Brussels and in France. Okay. Thank you for your attention.
Congratulations. Wow, a lot of information. Thank you, Justine.
I'm sorry, because I did so many things and I was like, okay, I have to rush.
It's what you like. You can keep sharing your screens in case we need to come back to it.
It's because I was sharing the whole screen, so I will try to.
She's not seeing us.
Yeah, not anyway. You will see us. Yes, it's true.
Yes, so I can see you. That's why.
I'd like to start the other way around from last time. So, Christelle,
okay.
Your turn.
Well, thank you, Justine. Again, really multitasking. A police officer is not staying in just one office. I can see that.
No, I don't like to stay in the office.
That's really cool to learn what you did, because you said not a lot, but it's quite a lot with just in 3 months, all these different tasks. Perhaps one question for you. About the position paper, how did you really base it on? So is it based on like articles? Do you have to just check all the regulation? How it's really like what is the process?
So first I did read all the regulation, and I've took the main points, the main changes that will affect the fishers, and I backed this up with the research and with the current situation in Malta. And then after doing the writing, I started to share with my colleagues. And all of the colleagues, they have their own little expertise, let's say. So they gave their input regarding to their expertise and what they think that it's needed within the local scenario.
Okay. And so if I come back to the first kind of position you take about like, to regulate vessels, how many of them are already regulated? Because you said that they need to be all regulated by 2030. So I'm assuming that already some of them are regulated, but perhaps not.
So the ones that are regulated are the ones that are over 12 meters. So the really small scale are not being regulated at the moment anywhere in the Mediterranean. So through this new regulation, it will be that all of the vessels will have a vessel monitoring system. In Malta, let's say 80 to 90% are all small scales, as is consistent with most of the Mediterranean countries. So only the 10 to 20% are being monitored.
Okay, cool. And so I understand that fishermen cooperation is not so easy. So yeah.
What is your question?
No, it's just like, so how many answers did you really get from your questionnaire? Because you show us the slide with all the results, but like how many, what numbers does it represent?
Okay, so it is very preliminary. I've only collected 4 questionnaires. However, BirdLife have already collected 37 questionnaires, but obviously I'm not gonna present that because it's not what I did. But basically, I initiated contact with 5 fishers, so it's quite good that all of them agreed to help me fill in the questionnaire. I've only communicated with 5 because at some point the team told me, listen, it's better you don't speak to more fishermen because you're gonna get overwhelmed. And it's true, because with 5 it was already, some of them contact through WhatsApp, some call me, and it's not always easy to communicate with all. And also they told me if they suddenly start inviting you on board, you're gonna start saying no to a lot of them, and then they're disappointed, kind of.
It's easy, yeah, to have the balance in between. Okay. So how did you really, how do you see, because you're going to continue on these projects, so how do you want to really do and to continue with the fishermen? Like, because you flagged some of them, but how do you want to continue with them?
With the
Also-
same fisher.
Yeah, well, with the same or perhaps more, but you say it might be difficult. So what is your future plan?
So definitely for now, I'm gonna keep contact with these 5, and I classify them into ones that are very reluctant to get me on board, and there are the ones that are more easy to talk to. So first, I will focus on the ones that are more easy to talk to. While in the meanwhile, with the others, I'm planning to keep going to the fishing village and make informal meetings with them, because it's all about gaining trust. And even the way I speak to them, I have to change the language that I use a little bit. And I'm learning a lot from them because they use words that I never heard. So it's a very slow process, but it's one of the goals that I enjoy the most, let's say. I thought I will not enjoy it because it's quite intimidating to approach the fishers, but at the end they're very communicative. But then to get you on board, they all say, yes, it's come on board, it's not a problem. But then I always call them, listen, when we're gonna organize it? Today I'm not there. Today I'm offshore, and so it's always something going on like that.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Thank you. Great work. Very large. So I have a question about the talking you already have with the fishermen. So the fishermen have a mindset with the species, or so they are annoying for them, etc. Maybe in their mind. But for the point of view of the population, what is their mindset about this species? What is the difference between the two kind of people, the fishermen and the population?
The population, you mean the public?
Yes.
Okay, well, so what's the difference between the perception of the public and the fishers on the birds?
Exactly.
Okay. So obviously the fishers, they find them annoying. They all of them, they told me annoying so far, because they're preparing their lines and the birds come around and they catch their bait. However, there were 2 of them, they told me it doesn't bother so much, but I've noticed, well, I've only have preliminary results so far, but I've noticed that the ones with the biggest boats, they don't mind them so much, but the ones that are smaller or that go alone, he minded it more. And in fact, one of them, he goes alone and he told me it's dangerous, because he feels intimidated by them, I think. And then as for the public, unfortunately, there's something that is against BirdLife. In Malta, there is a lot of illegal hunting going on, and BirdLife Malta, we don't have a good name. There's a lot of hunters, and they don't really like us. So going to the public events, that was at the back of my mind, because I know how people are, what's their perception of BirdLife usually, that they're the ones always going against the hunters. And I'm coming from a hunting family as well. And I've noticed that the public were very receptive. I was very surprised. Like with the families, they were very interested in what we're doing. They were like, well done, keep doing it. So they were I was impressed, because I think that the families and with the newer generation, they have more of an open idea about conservation of birds.
And
does that answer your question?
Yes, exactly. Do you think that a change in the mindset of the public can have an impact of the mindset of the fishermen? Can the public have an impact on the fishermen perspective?
I do believe so, yes, because especially if what I was trying to do through the public events, I was trying to make them feel like an ownership for what we have, because it's a natural heritage, that Malta is so important for these seabirds. So I was trying to make them understand that Malta, although it's a very tiny island, it's very important for these seabirds. Like for the storm petrel, for example, it holds 50% of the Mediterranean population, is very important. And by this, they were very impressed. We organized a lot of public events, like in 1 month, we're going to take people for boat trips so they can see the sheer waters and hear their callings. They organize a lot of night walks. So I think in this way we're raising more awareness. And since a lot of fishers, sorry, and since a lot of fishers, well, they have their own families as well. I think it will combine, you know, and also through this project that we're keeping communication with the fishers, I think they will change a bit the perception of us, because if we show them that, listen, we don't want, what we want is just to reduce the bycatch and also to reduce your irritation. And that's something that we're telling them. Like, we know that the seabirds are irritating, they catch the bait, and also if they're stuck on the hook, to remove them, it's annoying for them. It takes time, you know, while they're picking up the line. Even when they picked up the turtle, I noticed he was very annoyed and by the turtle, because it takes time to remove the hook. So they just want to get it over and done with. So this is something we're trying to communicate to them as well, because eventually the idea is to implement a mitigation measure. And the mitigation measure is like a kite, and it's hung on a pole over the vessel. And this will reduce the seabirds' interactions. And this doesn't affect their catches, it doesn't touch their gear, because apparently when you touch their gear, it's a no-go to touch their gear for fishers. So eventually we will push for this mitigation measure, so that there will be less seabird interactions and hopefully less bycatch as well. So I'm hoping that in that sense, then they will start to not be annoyed anymore by the seabirds.
Justine.
And the last question. Last, very quick.
Go and come back.
Okay,
I have another question.
okay.
Also. Yeah, you have to choose your questions. Maybe let's go to you, Florence.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation, Justine. My first one is regarding the renewable energy, the offshore renewable energy project you mentioned. So obviously for seabirds, it's not ideal, but as is the case in marine spatial planning, sometimes we have to make compromises. If you were to, with your seabird knowledge and maybe other knowledge of different thematics, to suggest that they developed it in one of those 6 zones, is there one zone in particular that you would recommend more than the others, and why?
The thing is, I think all of them pose a risk, because the areas they propose, it's quite in a small space. Malta is quite small, and it's also, Malta coincides as well with the migratory route. Sometimes they pass over Malta, especially when there is bad weather. So we're in the middle of the migratory route between Africa and Europe as well. So anywhere, let's say, it's going to be a risk for birds. But through the risk assessments that BirdLife has done, they've identified some areas which are have a higher risk. Let's say mostly are the areas where the birds they forage, and where they raft, because scopolis especially, they have a behavior that they raft on the water. So they are like resting on the water, waiting for the darkness to return to their colonies. So for sure it would be in these areas where there is no rafting zones and where they don't go foraging, as for the seabirds. And also it's hard to tell, because the report they've released, just to give you a bit of an overview, they're basing it, the idea is that they will develop the offshore renewables based on that report, if it needed be, because there is a new regulation, it's called Renewable Acceleration Areas, that because after the Russian-Ukrainian war, they want to accelerate areas for development of renewables. And on the report, they say that it might be the case that an environmental impact assessment is not needed to develop an offshore wind farm. This is ridiculous. And they want to base it on the report. And the report is very incomplete, like even in terms of benthic assemblages and everything. Like they just based it on desk-based studies. So it was very badly made. Okay, this is bad advertisement for my country. But yes, I mean, we criticized a lot.
Yeah, fair enough. Quite surprising that an environmental impact assessment isn't needed.
Yes.
Otherwise, to come back to, you mentioned the Scopolis shearwater, which wasn't one of the species focused on in the projects of BirdLife.
No.
Why is that? Is there a reason behind it that this species gets less visibility than the other two? And if you were to have to design a project on this species, how could your lessons learned from BirdLife's current projects feed into this?
Okay, so the reason for that is two reasons. So, or maybe they're together, but one of them is because to apply for the LIFE project, it needs to be a species of priority in order to get the funding, and that's the reality. And the alcoins are species of priorities because they're listed as vulnerable in the IUCN Red List. And also the Mediterranean storm petrel is because the Mediterranean population is in decline. As for the scopoles, they're in decline as well, but not as much as the others. So when we apply for funding, we focus more on the alcoins. And in that way, we still do conservation actions on scopoles, because while we're doing field work, we also do field work for scopoles, because some colonies, they're close to each other. So we still manage to do some conservation actions on scopoles, even though the projects are not directly focused on them. But on paper, it's and I've heard this before, that the way how to carry out studies or conservation actions on some species that are of not big concern on paper, they apply for other projects, and then through that we can do some work on the other species. What was learned from the previous projects and how we can apply for scopoles? Well, this is a tricky question. But I think so far, BirdLife have been doing quite a lot of work on seabirds. They've already done one project on scopoles before. It was in around 2015. It was to determine the special protected areas, because it's very recent that the special protected areas were established. So they've done a project to establish the special protected areas, which were mainly the foraging areas and the crafting areas of scopoles. And I think BirdLife already has a good working knowledge on how to carry out field work, collect data on the seabirds. So what has been done already and what's still being done can be applied for scopoles as well.
Okay.
Does that
Thanks,
answer your
Justine.
question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Florence, Justine. I want to ask a last question, because I had also a question that actually combines quite well with the one from Katerina from Greece, so who is online. So Katerina, I will ask your question because mine was close to this one. Katerina, your question is, if you were to work with fishers again, and I think you are going to, how would you approach building a trusting relationship with the fishers that were more reluctant to cooperate? This combines with a question. So you already partly answered to that question, but I wanted also to connect this question to, okay, what do you think are the learnings that you had from this experience, from this place? How could you transfer that to other places? Do you think that the way we create this relationship with fishermen is the same everywhere in the world? Maybe not, but in other places in the world.
Yeah, and if I can add, I think Katerina is asking because she is also doing a lot of work with fishermen, but in Greece for.
Okay. In where?
In Greece.
In Greece, okay. So I would say, because I think I came across a bit wrong. I mean, they were all receptive for communication in the beginning. Like, so far, once I start speaking to them, they never stop speaking. They have a lot to say. They like speaking to people, because what I was doing is I was walking across the promenade. I see someone and I go, hey, hello, how's it going? What I tried to do to gain their trust is first to see how I can match my interests with them. So you have to find a common ground between you that you can speak about. Like, for example, I told them I was working on boats before, and I worked on tuna fishing boats before. So that already helped me, you know. And also that I speak the same language, meaning that I'm Maltese. Unfortunately, BirdLife, most of the team is not Maltese. I think it's because of the negative perception there is for BirdLife because of hunting, but whatever. Yes, speaking the same language is very important. And then also, I think the way you dress, the way you approach them, you have to make them feel at ease. And also, when you was doing the questionnaire, it's like even getting out the paper, I felt uncomfortable to do that. So, but in the beginning, I didn't know the answers, or the questions all by heart. But then towards the second one, I didn't know all the questions, and I was asking them during the conversation. So to get information from them is more through conversation. But if you go with a paper, I feel they don't like it at all. Or tablets or anything of the sort. They feel very intimidated because they don't use them, and they see it as something they're not confident with. Also, they thought I'm from the fishing department, from the fisheries department at the beginning, and they don't like the fisheries department because I was asking a lot of questions. So I would say yes, as much as possible, try to gain their trust and become their friend. Like even the guy I went with on the boat, I spoke a lot about things that are not related to fishing as well. So trying to build a really, becoming a friend to them, kind of, I must say.
Thank you, Justine. I think it's really important, yes, to build this connection for all projects, whatever. It's to acquire
Yes.
information. Of course, you have a question, Johan. You know you have to stand and go to the microphone. The last question will come from Johan.
Hello. First of all, super nice presentations. I love shearwaters. They're super amazing birds, especially like the noise they make.
Yes.
I kind of work with shearwaters, but mostly in the context of whales. And there we saw, oh, it's me. That they really have this like relationship with whales, and now because of the decrease in whales, also with fishermen, that they kind of need them for food. Because they really look for them. So I was wondering, with like that cage you showed, where it will kind of restrict them, won't that also downplay the effectiveness of their strategy, because they will not be able to find as much food, their foraging might be lesser? So is that like a risk that you took into regard when you made the strategy?
Okay, I don't know if I understood your question. So you're saying that they interact with whales, and since whales are in decline...
They also interact with whales and fishermen, at least in Portugal. Maybe it's in Malta different, but we saw that in Portugal, they really go to the fishermen vessels, they find them and search them because they know there's fish there.
Yes.
And then they use it to get food, and it's an important strategy for these birds.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if those impact regulations might negatively affect their foraging strategy, and then also worsen their status.
Yes, it does. It is interrupting their foraging strategy for sure, because what happens, that's why bycatch happens, because they approach the vessels because they know it's an easy source of food, and then they get caught in the line. And actually on the vessel I was on, he was throwing the fish for them because they had extra bait. So there's a lot of, they know they can get the food easily. Especially the scopolis, mostly the scopolis that are interacted the most while I was there. Well, I've only been twice, but I was offshore in the Mediterranean before, and also always scopolis interact with boats.
Yeah. It's a cool interaction, I think, but I can imagine, as you said, it's quite annoying for the fishermen, probably. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan. So thank you, Justine. That's the end, unfortunately, for now. We have to do a break. Congratulations again.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all for your questions and for all the teaching. And thank you.
Thank you, Justine. So we are going to take a break now, and coming back with Jessica, who is online. Yes, at 10:35. So 10 minutes break, and then we go for Jessica and Hasan. Allez, okay, here we go. So here we go again. Hello, Jessica. You're here. Do you hear me?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Can you share your screen, please?
Yes.
Because after this break, we'll go on with the presentation of the Jessica brand and Hasan Jafar Sangbin on site. Florence, you're still here with us?
Are you seeing the screen?
Yes, I can see your screen. Just if you can, but it's full screen.
You see
I
full
can
screen?
see. it's all good and all ready.
Okay. Okay, so I am Jessica, and I'll do my professional project at the NGO Positive Change for Marine Life, and it's about the promotion of sustainable practices and community engagement for marine conservation in India. So context-wise, the ocean faces many pressures that probably all of you know by now. One is plastic pollution, and the other one is the overexploitation of the oceans from the fish stock. And those pressures are especially critical in coastal communities, but then even more critical also in still developing countries. And in India, I'm in a small village or city called Kovalam. It's in the very south of India in the state of Kerala. And there, those pressures are also present. They do have a waste management system, but it's not very well managed. So you do have a lot of dump sites and you see plastic waste everywhere, which of course is not just, it's like pretty bad because they also burn it, especially the plastic, which of course is really bad for the health of the community, but also for the marine life and for the other environment. And then fishing wise, the fishers do notice that there are less and less fish, making it more difficult for them to get income and even like their food, because they depend on the protein as well. And in the district where I am, 60% of the fishing families are actually living in poverty. But then there are also not many fish regulations that would help to keep the fish stock at a sustainable level. And the NGO, in short, it's called PCFML, has several projects. The main project is called Waste to Wealth, and they have or distribute alternative solutions for single-use plastics, such as paper straws instead of plastic straws. They also take the food waste from restaurants and hotels and compost it via black soldier flies, and then they sell that as a fertilizer. And also they have a waste collection service that they started in a fishing community where the government system wasn't working at all. So before it was really just dumped in the environment, in the ocean, and now it's being collected there from our service, with which we also employ around 90 local women. Then Fishing for Change is working to get more sustainable fishing methods to the fisheries, but also ideally to have in the future a locally managed marine protected area. And the last project, Rewilding for Our Floodplains, is about the restoration and conservation of the estuary in the Puva region, together with its mangrove forests. So the team, the NGO is actually an Australian team, so the headquarters is in Australia. They have 3 people, but on the slide I just mentioned the ones that I'm actually engaging with, which is a CEO, also the digital engagement coordinator. In India, we are 8 people, 6 of them are full-time employees, and then 2 interns. And Libyan is a team coordinator, manager / my supervisor, and then we have several project leads, election for administration, and other project supporters. And for interns, it's me. I'm also project lead of another project that I'll introduce later on. And Adarsh is helping me, and Michael is helping me as well. And then we have another branch in the Solomon Islands, but we're not, with my project, what I'm doing, I'm not engaged with them at all. Then the project overview. So the objectives mainly are to support the NGO in many things. One of them is the strategy and the management, but also to help them more to widen the outreach and awareness and the education on the environmental marine issues and the waste issue as well, to find self-financing methods and to increase the funding within India, and then ideally to kick off the project, which is Clean Kovalam, and I'll have that explained on a different slide. But the ultimate goals on the long-term basis will be to create a clean and healthy coast, especially in Kovalam. And for that, we also will have to have effective waste management and to integrate sustainable practices for the community. And ideally, we also want the NGO to be financially independent from the headquarters. I started my project in May. First, getting to know everyone, see how they work, connecting to the community, but also starting to define the Clean Kovalam project. And I already helped with some design support. Then in June, we started to kick off the Clean Kovalam project and already interacting with a few more stakeholders. And in July, we hope to have possible investors for the Clean Kovalam, or to have meetings with them, to finish a proposal with them and some school workshops, and hopefully starting to have upcycling products. And in August, I will be back in Europe, but I will still be supporting remotely with analysis and creation of diverse contents or materials. And the little arrows indicate some challenges that we had and partly overcome or still overcoming. And that's a general overview of all the things that are theory happening or that I drafted at the beginning, but I'm not going into detail because it's continuously changing. What is today could be super different from tomorrow. So I gave up on this plan. It's just a rough guideline of what should be there. Yeah. So for the stakeholders, they remain more or less the same though, which is of course the NGO itself. With the headquarters, yeah, we are not too much involved with them. We just keep them informed. Most of the decisions are done with the Indian branch NGO. And then the locals are very important because all the projects are community-based projects. So we need to engage with them really a lot. And the ones that we're already engaging with, they usually have a higher interest because they already know the benefits of it. And some others, they might not be interested yet, that we still need to convince to see what, if you work with us or if you follow the proper waste management, you get these and these benefits. And some others, they actually know they should do something, they just haven't done anything yet. So those are a little bit easier to get on board. And then, of course, we have the MARRES supervisors to keep informed and the tourists, which at the moment we just monitor, but later on, especially for the Clean Kovalam project, they'll be getting more important as well. So for the first results, I helped making a promotional video for them, helping with other design projects. For instance, they have a bag that they use to distribute the paper straw, so they wanted to have a print on that as well. So I made that, and every now and then comes something in, like they need a little flyer for having new internship opportunities. So every time something pops up like that, I support them. It's not directly a result, but it's participating in events organized from other companies. For instance, the Kerala Bags organized a tree planting event. And for us, it's very crucial to get there to be able to network and find more collaborations, but also to spread the word about the NGO. For instance, at the Kerala Bag, I was holding a spontaneous 3-minute speech, and there were like politicians present, priests and other companies. So that was a very interesting experience. So we're attending those events to announce our NGO as well and to connect with others. Then the Clean Kovalam project. So that project wasn't in the plan before me going here. It was just me and Lieben were talking, and we were very frustrated about all the trash at the beach and all the burning that was happening. One day the office was completely in smoke because the hotel next door was like burning a lot of waste. So that's how we kicked off this program, and it's pretty much to start off making a baseline study with all the stakeholders, like the local hotels, restaurants, even the shops, like really to understand what they do with their waste, and if they burn it or if they dump it, why do they do it? So we have some surveys. We already went out and interviewed around 250 people or so to see what they do with their waste, to really just understand where the issue is. So when we ask them, we're not going to punish them even if they burn it. We just want to understand why they do it so that we can help fixing that issue. So therefore, it's also a lot of community-based again, where there's a lot of outreach and education that we plan to do in workshops to really make them understand why that is an issue and why they shouldn't be doing it, and why they actually should demand for proper waste management. So that it's really from them coming the demand, so that the chances of a long-term success for this project will be given. And of course, for that, we also want to have then at the end a successful waste management system. We'll be participating or doing some cleanups. Also, we plan to do some murals for awareness, but also at the same time to increase the attractiveness of Kovalam, and having workshops. And then we also had the idea to create an engagement badge for hotels and restaurants. So for instance, if they fulfill certain criteria, for instance, not having product with microplastic, for instance, then they can get this badge that they can use for their website or for their door as it's a saying that they participate in this nice program, and to get them more engaged as well. Then other things also I help them with diverse administration documents, setting up, for instance, also some social media accounts. I have training the staff as well, or develop other internship projects for the next interns to come, and help with several reports as well, but it's difficult to really show that as a result, but I'm like helping them almost in every corner, let's say. Then for the financing for the project, it's also a little bit tricky because I'm like involved in everything. But mainly the things I do now in these 3 months here, that is just involved more or less paper, buying few creative equipment. So the cost is not too high. The highest cost that you would see here is just me with a relocation to India. But then if we want to focus on the Clean Kovalam project, that will be a huge budget, because we want to install also public toilets, trash cans, ideally having a upcycling composting facilities. So it's also going to be a project that spans over multiple years. So for that, we have developing at the moment a budgeting plan and then ideally hope to get funding for that. So risk, we identified 11 risks before coming here. Unfortunately, many of them came true, and unfortunately, even the ones that I thought have a less probability. So risk one, lack of budget. It's not necessarily now for my time here, but they didn't get the funding they hoped to get. So if they don't get funding soon, there might be a big issue coming up. Risk two, sickness. I've been sick like every 2.5 weeks. Nothing serious, luckily, but it's still annoying. Risk three, miscommunication or language cultural barrier. Sometimes you talk with one other colleague and you agree that they do this and that in that area, and then they come back and they went into a complete different area, for instance, for surveys. Not a big issue, but these things happen even though before everybody thought it's super clear what the other person is supposed to do. Risk six, temporary electricity cuts. They just happen like every second day. So I always keep the device charged, so it's not an issue for now. Risk seven, change or unawareness of regulation. So it's monsoon season, and apparently during monsoon season, they lock down the beach. So you're not even allowed to put your toe into the water. Very frustrating, which might interfere with our beach cleanups that we plan to do, but maybe you'll still be able to get the permission if you keep a certain distance from the water line. Risk nine, delay of visa. That happened too. My visa was delayed for 1 month. Also not an issue because I had the option to still postpone it by a month. So there are also no more critical things. But risk 11 is a little tough, very tough actually. It's the internal team changes. And life is very unexpected. And one morning I went to the office in heavy rain, waiting for an hour, just thinking, because of the rain, people are not coming. And then I sent a message in our local group. And unfortunately, I got the bad news that one colleague passed away, Lakshmi Kalidas. And she was a very great girl, so I wanted to mention her. And I'm not planning to get emotional. So she was a really great girl. She was our administration officer. She comes from a poor family, and she was really hardworking. She was very engaged, very interested on how to learn from me, to be involved with designing or learn how to crocheting. And she had very big dreams. And what I found the most inspirational from her was that she was a professional dancer, but she never took any dancing classes back then, or she never watched, like YouTube videos to teach herself. She really just learned it by herself, attending or listening to music and just starting to move to it. And she was really, really good at it. And we planned to do some workshops with children, where they dance to some cultural local music and pick up some plastics in a fun, engaging way. Unfortunately, that's not happening right now, hopefully at a later stage. But yeah, I just wanted to honor her. And what's also very a pity, because her brother is working at the same NGO, so it was a very, very tough time. But yeah, I wanted to just mention her and honor her in this way. So impact-wise, that was a huge impact. I didn't expect I would go to a funeral of a newly made friend and comforting her sister and family. Then otherwise, besides that heavy event, I'm often here out of my comfort zone, just because for being a foreigner here, looking different, you get a lot of attention, sometimes too much. Any time people see you, they want like selfies, which can get pretty annoying by times. And then the public speaking events is also not something I search for normally, because I rather don't have too much attention on me. But it's a nice way to learn and to grow from. And then since I'm here involved in almost every project and everything they do, like with management, fundraising, I'm also learning more about the system. It's like very diverse, and I learn a lot. Also cultural wise, how to interact with the locals and learn more about their stories by making, friends of other, not even from the NGO, but also from other stores, for instance. And on the sponsor side, they get a lot of knowledge from me regarding marine conservation, because in India, the Indian branch doesn't have people with marine conservation background, only in Australia. So they benefit from that as well. And I also give them new ideas and perspectives, like the creation of the new Clean Kovalam project. And they get a lot of support. And as I mentioned many times now, almost any field, like with design, softwares, editing, or GIS. Then I help them teaching, because also many of them don't have universities degrees. So they just finished high school and then they started working or didn't even work before. And we have also one fisherman who never used a computer, so we teach him how to type. So we give him like daily typing exercises, and what he has to type is about marine conservation, so he learns about that at the same time. And then they also get what I call the foreigner benefits. It sounds maybe a bit odd, but it means that, for instance, at Kerala back at the tree planting event, we wouldn't have gotten the chance to hold a speech if I wouldn't have been present. So just because I was there, they asked me, and specifically me, to hold a speech, like no one else from the NGO but me. So they get those kind of benefits when foreigners are present at their site. Then lastly, what is next? I roughly mentioned it. So it's finishing the baseline study and the funding proposals, introducing the Clean Kovalam project, like spreading the news about it, and ideally having some first upcycling products outside. And then in August, it's really just remote work and supporting anywhere I can, from report writing to analysis of the baseline study and creating further materials. And that's it. Nani in Malayalam for thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. It's the first time we started with Florence, second time with you, so it's your turn to start now.
Okay.
Jean-Vincent.
Thank you for the presentation. I have two main questions. First of all, it's about if you have the choice to point a main problem who already appear in this project, what would it be and how to manage it?
The main problem for the future will be funding and the capacity of people. So the issue also now is we have many projects going on, like the waste to wells, the Clean Kovalam, rewilding the floodplains and change for fisheries. But the issue is we don't have enough people to work on it, and the funding to also get experienced people. So luckily now we have actually, from this week on, we actually have 4 interns now, but they'll also just stay shortly. So the main issue really is capacity. If we get more people that can help to work on all these projects, we are able to progress further. But now, for instance, like 2 projects are almost on hold because we got the funding news and some lack of people to actually work on it. That's a pity. So the main issue is actually capacity.
And how to manage it in the future?
In the future, so we hope to get more funding, and they're involved right now to set up regular interns that come. I don't know if you guys know the platform GBI. It's like an internship platform where people can come from foreign countries and join, for instance, for marine conservation internships. So they plan to do that on a regular basis. They have a first trial this summer, I think in August, they get 6 interns. And if that works well, at least they can cover some works with interns on a regular basis, like the communication for the local Instagram site. It's usually also interns are quite interested in that. That would be a nice way. And to get more connection with universities as well, to get at least interns that work sadly, but often for free, until we can secure funding. And right now, the high priority is also just writing funding proposals for all our projects and just going out, meeting people that could possibly be investors for us.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is about the local ecosystem. So did you have some details about the functioning of the trophic chain, for example, or the possible impact of the restoration on the local ecosystem? How all this works?
So I didn't really work on that front or look into it too much because I was helping too much in other things. But mainly the issue is here, like in the ocean, they don't know too much about the marine life. So there are not many studies, from what I understood so far, that they know really what's all there. They just know whatever there is, it's decreasing. So actually for the fishing for chains, we also still need like baseline studies to really map like the coral reefs, even where they are exactly and which fish they are. So there's also still a huge gap of data knowledge. And for the mangroves, they mapped something, but that project is one I didn't really look at all. So I cannot tell you too much about that, unfortunately. But they do have some eagles here. They have monkeys. I've seen them, and lots of snakes, unfortunately. But I cannot tell you too much about the trophic chain. I didn't work on the biodiversity level inside.
Okay, thank you.
Allez, Crystal doesn't want to continue, so it's your turn.
Thanks for your presentation, Jessica. I have a few questions about the risk diagram first. I
Yes,
don't know
should
if
I go back?
yeah, that would be great if you could put it back up. Thanks. Yeah, so I mean, Jean-Vincent already touched on the subject of the lack of budget and the kind of difficulties that you face due to this. I was wondering how, like, why it's been given an impact score of 2. Is that because you were able to adapt and find other alternatives, or I don't know? To me, it would assume that a budget is kind of could have a higher.
Oh,
But just
yeah,
wondering
yeah,
what.
I understand. I understand. So the one issue, maybe I should have updated it like somehow. But before coming here, I didn't really know in what project I was involved. And the things where I saw myself being involved really included just, the use of paper or like little budgets for like some creative materials for workshops. So nothing that relates to like the clean Kovalam project. So that was also a whole issue in this presentation because one project is a clean Kovalam project, but besides that, I'm also involved in like all the other activities. So if you would put it on the clean Kovalam project as a main project, then yeah, of course the risk of the budget is much, much higher. But for like the parts where I'm here physically for the 3 months, it's not a huge impact, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. And then I'm just curious to hear more about your experience with the risk that you identified as language and cultural barriers. How did you find it as a foreigner coming into this community? And how was it to integrate with did you end up learning any Malayalam or?
Yes, I'm working very hard on Malayalam right now. So the integration was actually quite fine. I'm also not I don't work too much with the local fishing community. Like I've been there for some video recordings and they all were quite nice and welcoming, but I'm not sure if I would go there and ask them questions if they would respond a lot to me. But the other people from the NGO, they're quite close with them, so that's not really an issue if we need something from them. But otherwise here, like next to our NGO, there's like a juice shop and I regularly go there because it's amazing mango juice. And they are actually now my Malayalam teachers. So I really connect with them and they have like a scuba school just next door. And whenever we talk, they're like, I can perceive that people around me, they're like entertained by me talking to them. And it's like more like a welcoming feeling. It's not like, like, oh, what is she doing here? Every now and then you also have people that seem to be very skeptical. Like they look at you and like, so what's she doing here, or who is that, coming from somewhere, even when you just walk, not necessarily, related to NGO, or just when you're somewhere around. And just very often you have it, people just coming up out of the blue, not even saying anything. They just hold the picture in front of you and ask selfie. And then they take a picture and then they say thank you sometimes not, and then they disappear again. So it really depends a little bit on the person as well. But I think normally it's quite good, actually. People are very welcoming and nice, actually.
Okay, yeah. And then just a question more specifically on the clean Kovalam, is it?
Clean Kovalam, yeah.
Kovalam. Clean Kovalam project. And even maybe the Waste to Health Wealth project, this kind of touches maybe on that. But I'm curious about what is the waste that you found most present? Like what are the types of plastic or different things that you found most? And do you know from where they were coming? Yeah.
So the waste that, like as of now, we didn't do cleanups while I'm here. But what you just see very often are just plastic bottles, super many plastic bottles. Then like ship bags from ships, that they eat, those bags. And then also plastic spoons, not at our beach, but at another beach. There are tons and tons and tons of plastic spoons and other plastic dishes or cutlery stuff. And plastic bags, bottles, and what did I say? These chips bags. These are, I think, the most common things that you find on a continuous basis. And then how they get there, it's really just people just litter. Like there are not enough trash cans, and if they are, they're usually open. They're not being emptied regularly. And then also people just dump really in the canals and the water river that goes into the ocean. So
yeah, it's just really not a proper working system that they have. That's how they all ended up in the ocean. Also, here where it is, some areas like higher. So when the heavy rain comes, it all gets washed into the ocean.
Okay. Did you see any evidence of microplastic on these beaches or no?
Right now in the Kovalam beach, not too much, but if you go one beach further, which is, I don't know, like 30 minutes or so from where I am, there's a fishing community, and there, if you just look where all the boats are parked, you see tons of microplastic. So there's a lot, depending on which area you look.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you, Flo. So here we go.
Yeah.
Instead.
So thank you, Jessica, for your presentation. Perhaps I have just more like personal question or feelings that you get, because so we talk about this huge plastic pollution. What about your experience in the daily life, like living there? Do you really see and feel it? And also with the local communities, how do they really engage with that, or like their opinion, willingness also to change that, or not? I don't know.
So I see it and feel it every time. It's like really, really bad. Not necessarily too much on the beach. Like when you go to the beach, in some areas you can see, like clean areas. But then if you look more to where the beach goes into the like parking lot and there start to be the trees, that's where the trash usually really accumulates a lot. But you do see it a lot everywhere. Just walking from here towards the beach, next to the streets, and there's smaller green areas. It's not really green anymore because they're just using it as dump sites or burning sites. So. Or even here in my room, in neighbor house, they always burn stuff. So at least once a day, I have like smoke in my room, which is really annoying and it really stinks. So I do notice this on a daily basis, and it really annoys me. Some people from the interview, I didn't do the interview also because we asked really questions. Do you burn or do you dump it? And the burning is actually by law forbidden. So we thought, okay, if I go out and ask them, they anyways will not be honest. Now we got like 50% or a little bit honest. So some admitted they burn part of their waste, but you can assume that all that said they burn part of their waste, they actually burn all of it. But we also asked them, are you willing to do something to create a clean environment? And there we got a quite positive response. So many actually seem to be knowing that it is an issue and they're wanting to fix it, but they just don't know how, because also the government system that is here, it only picks up plastic if they come, but they don't have any other solutions for like the bio waste or for waste that is, let's say, sanitary pads or diapers. Like there's no solution for that. The government doesn't pick it up from the local households, but it gets being picked up from the hotels, because then it's a different department again that is responsible for it. So there's a big mess a little bit going on, and there's no complete solution for all the waste that you could create to be picked up. So they need to do something with it. So that's why they dump it or they burn it. Yeah.
Okay,
so you see it on a daily basis. People state that they are willing to support, and the place where I'm staying at a homestay, he's really actually very engaged in it and really thinks, oh, it's really bad what things happening, but I'm not sure how many people are actually that strong of that feeling. But it seems they do realize, but they just don't know what to do. They're like overwhelmed, I think, it's the situation.
So do you feel like, because perhaps not at your place directly, but I guess there is also tourism activities, like, do you feel like people coming there do see this problem, or they try, as the hotel benefit from perhaps more like waste management? Do you think they still see it or not?
Yeah, so there are also a lot of tourists that come, like especially the parking lot. It's super littered, but that mostly from the tourists at the parking lot. But we were also thinking, if we don't start from the community, if we just start with the tourists, it's just continue being just regular cleanups, because the tourists, they come from everywhere, they might not return. So you need to continuously tell them. But if we encourage and make the community really strong, like the hotel owners, the locals, and if they starting to do everything properly, and if we then set up, trash, for instance, at the parking lot, and they also, like if they see a tourist littering, like informing, hey, here you cannot do it, put it there. And also to what someone pointed out when we introduced him, actually, the Clean Kovalam project was interesting because here they don't have the culture of using trash cans. It's common in, let's say, Europe. So what we actually need to do, if we set up trash cans, we need to have like a little, let's say, army of volunteers or interns that really out there present for 6 months or even up to a year to teach people like, hey, throw it in the trash can, like throw it in there so that they start having the habit of actually putting things in the trash bin because they don't have that habit. And now I forgot the original question, sorry.
That's okay. Okay, interesting, yeah. And the last one also perhaps, because I know you had so many interests, so and they're doing a lot of different projects. What about so your involvement with a little bit of fisheries, because you are talking about the idea that fish stock are really declining and there is an impact also on local communities. How do you, what's your NGO is doing with that?
So at the moment they are preparing an interview, like a survey to do with the fishermen. And I also added some questions that relate also to like the Clean Kovalam project, especially regarding like, let's say, lost fishing gear. But at the moment, these projects are a little bit not super fluid. It's like it's still in the starting phase as well. But what they do really try to do is like understanding what they do, how many fish they catch, and which species they catch. So the landing, to document the landing, and also to document in which areas they go. And then it's very important as the next step to do the mapping of where are the nurseries, where are the coral reefs, and like to really understand what is actually in the ocean. Because if I understood correctly from them, they don't have that at the moment. There have been not many studies on the marine environment in this region. So it's really like a baseline study. They need to have a baseline study. That would be one of the first things. And also, we employed recently like a fisherman in our NGO. So he was a fisherman for very, very long. So he grew up as a kid already being involved. And he's saying, yeah, the fish there are getting less and getting less, but he didn't understood the concept of overfishing. Because one day a friend was visiting and I was telling her, like a tourist that I met, she was coming, I was explaining her about the overfishing. And Michael is a fisherman, he was present as well. And he was listening, and I could see based on his expression that he wasn't agreeing on what I was saying. And then I talked again with him, and it's pretty much what he didn't understand is that how can we overfish if we catch just so little fish? So that was the issue that he didn't get. That it is already being overfished. That's why there is so little fish, and not necessarily it's because of the small artisanal fishes, but about the big ones with the trawlers and purse seine. So there's still a big lack of education. So the idea is also to just educate really the fishermen, like if you catch fish, leave the baby fish, leave the pregnant fish or the female fish, to be able to get the stock back running. There's a lot of education involvement also has to be done, a lot.
Okay, well, cool. And I guess also perhaps a plastic involvement in this. I don't know if there is an impact of pollution also on the fish stocks, but probably there is something also.
I would assume so. I don't have any data, but I would heavily assume so.
Okay, cool. Yeah, all good for me.
Thank you. Well, as a follow-up question, we talked a lot about plastic there and the connection between people and the plastic problem. I'm sure all of that is, of course, not to blame anybody. These things take time. And so having a look maybe on a positive point of view, these things take time once again. So do you see a dynamic? Like, okay, the reality that you're depicting is still problematic, of course, but are you aware of what has been developed in this community in the last, in a recent period compared to before? Do you think it's already better than, 10 years ago, for example?
So we started to introduce that waste to wells, or the waste collection system, in that one fishing community. So that's working very well, and they transformed our one previously dump site into what they call now a playground. So for me, it's just like an empty field with much less trash, but you can still see it a little bit flying around. But before it was like really a big dump site. So they made transformation in that way, or they already started to install in that same community like a vegetable garden, which was also previously a dump site. So change is happening, but also with the community, or the fishing community especially, they're very money driven. So now they participate also because we give them a little bit of reimbursement for collecting the waste and segregating it and bringing it to us. But if we would probably stop that, they might stop that as well, because they're very, very money driven, the fishing communities. That's a very interesting dynamic, actually, because I've been also hearing from fishermen, which doesn't go together with the data that I found, from articles, is that actually the fishermen make quite a bit of money, but then they waste it on things like, alcohol and other things that you maybe shouldn't be spending all your money on. And then when they go home, they just don't have the money because they spend it otherwise. So it's also interesting to just see the internal dynamics of what is being said in articles and what you perceive of actually being here. So there's a lot of things happening, but I do believe that people are genuinely really interested in it, especially if you make them understand, not necessarily that's okay, don't do it because it's bad for your health. I don't even think that's the main drive maybe for them, but it's saying like Kovalam used to be an amazing tourist destination, but it's going down, they're getting less and less tourists. So we also try to sell it in a way that if you keep it clean, you will get business again. And then they're already more interested again. I was like, oh, we're getting this like business. We're not having to struggle anymore during the monsoon season if tourists are coming back. So there are like many dynamics somehow that come together. So it's a bit tricky, but I am hopeful, and I think it is manageable to get them all on board. But of course, it will take some time, not from today to tomorrow.
Jessica, thank you for sharing this reality, what you experience there, also everything you experience there, not only the reality of plastic. And yeah, thank you for that. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
We also have people saying hello online. Thank you, Nicole again. Luce, Michel, Atipoli. Hope you get it.
Adipoli, yes. That means super. Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you a lot, guys, also to stay connected. And so here we go now, or you're already standing up? Okay. So, oh, you're here, Michel. Fantastic. On the screen and in the room at the same time. Michel is joining us, Jessica, that's why. So, here we are. Yes, so that's because you're the last presentation of this entire symposium. So I just wanted to say that, that's the last presentation. So enjoy it. Enjoy the next 15 minutes. Hasan,
so much.
You can go.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Hasan. I'm gonna presenting my feasibility study that I did with MPN, the Mediterranean Posidonia Network. I'm gonna be tackling mapping the solutions of eco-mooring in the Mediterranean Sea. So as a start, I'm going to be going through the agenda real fast. So we have the context, objectives, team stakeholders, results, financial aspect, assumptions, and the impact. So an overview about the context of Posidonia. It's an endemic seagrass found in the Mediterranean. It can go deep down to 40 meters. It covers 1.2 million hectares of the entire Mediterranean seafloor. It's a critical habitat supporting 20 to 25% of the entire marine species in the Med. It's also a huge carbon sink, absorbing 5.6 million tons of annual CO2 emissions. It's also a coastal protection. It reduces coastal erosion. And new studies have shown that it has potential for positive human health impacts. So for the distribution of Posidonia, as you can see in the figure on the left, in green, Posidonia is almost found everywhere on the Med, from the west to the east, but except Lebanon, there's no evidence of Posidonia in Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, and some parts of Egypt. For the last 50 years, a lot of regression have been impacting on Posidonia. So we lost almost 120,000 hectares of Posidonia since the last 50 years, as you can see on the map on the right in red. So a lot of biodiversity is at risk because of these main four pressures. We have anchoring, bottom trawling, coastal development, and pollution. And this is why the MPN was established. It was established in 2019 by OFB and the Ministry of Environment and the Balearic Islands. It creates a collaborative stakeholder involvement from the different actors in the Med. We're talking about scientists, governments, private sectors, and a lot of entities we're going to be talking about in a bit. And of course, to eliminate the pressures on Posidonia. So we have four main objectives for MPN. So to understand and to create a solution, we need to understand the problem. And this is why one of the main objectives is mapping the pressures and impacts on Posidonia. We have creating new regulations and strengthening the current ones. Regulation isn't just important, I believe it's the foundation of conservation. We have facilitating the advent of eco-mooring and anchoring. And lastly, raising awareness at local, regional, and international levels. So, and this is where I come in. As I mentioned, I'm doing the feasibility study. I'm going to be tackling three main points. First, mapping the eco-mooring solutions implemented by each country on the Med. We have currently 10 countries involved. Lessons learned and best practices. This is for the eco-mooring implementation. And of course, developing the solution strategy and toolkit. So for teams and stakeholders, we have the founding members, OFB, Balearic Island Government, and White Sand. These are the steering committee. They put the strategic plans for the entire network. We have the coordination task force members, OFB, WWF, IUCN, Blue Seas, and so on. We have 8 main members. And these members create the action plans for the implementation of the strategy. Going deeper to the team, I'm working alongside with Frederic, he's the project manager. He's also the head of the MPN. He oversees all the strategic and action plans for the MPN and the network. We have Lian, she's also a project manager. Currently, she achieved mapping the pressures on Posidonia in the Med, including 10 countries, and myself doing the feasibility study for the eco-mooring solution. As I mentioned, we have 10 countries involved. We have Turkey, Tunisia, Spain, Malta, Italy, Greece, France, Cyprus, Croatia, Algeria. So we're talking about South Europe and North of Africa, including different sectors from those countries. So we have the governments, NGOs, universities, public entities, private sectors, and so on. So in total, we have 157 members currently in the network. But I want to also shed a light on a main thing. This is not always stable because a lot of actors come in and out of the network depending on their commitment and their contribution to the network. So to understand how stakeholders and the importance of stakeholders, this matrix allows us to understand and manage the stakeholders. For example, who has the highest influence and who has the highest interest. For example, we need to manage closely for the coordination task force, the members and the funders, because they have the biggest impacts on the project. Moving forward for the results, currently the eco-mooring solution report, it's still under development. One of my achievements is the MPN solution dashboard that we're gonna be talking about in a bit. But regarding the eco-mooring solution report, I'm just gonna be talking real fast about the table of content, what it's gonna be including. So first, I'm gonna be doing the initial state assessment for the distribution of Posidonia in the 10 countries, the eco-mooring practices, the pressures, the eco-mooring distribution, and the mooring areas distributed along the 10 countries. Also put in place the guideline principles. So if you want to implement an eco-mooring strategy, you need to have a proper guideline so you can have at least a success rate for the implementation project. There are three main objectives I'm going to be tackling: environmental objectives, economical objectives, and social objectives. Regarding solutions, eco-mooring systems, the types of eco-mooring systems, the regulatory framework, and raising awareness. We're going to have two main action plans: short-term, long-term, and finalize, we'll have the eco-mooring challenges and the monitoring and evaluation. So for the dashboard, before I get to it, so I created a survey using ArcGIS, and also the dashboard is using ArcGIS. The survey was distributed among the 157 actors, and yeah, it was distributed among the 107 actors. So this dashboard will allow us to understand the context of the region. Where are the MPAs, the size of the MPAs, eco-mooring locations, and so on. So I'm just gonna play the video real fast. I'm gonna be speaking. Okay. Okay, so as you can see on this side of the dashboard, we have the number of MPAs established, the size of the MPAs, the eco-mooring established, which attachment, if it's a small boat, less than 24 meters, a larger boat than 24 meters, funding required, Possidonic coverage in each site. We will understand the pressures, solution, funding, and challenges in the entire region. And in this site, we have the site data that will give us an overview and a closer understanding on each site that's being implementing the solution. And we can also filter on a country. For example, let's say France. We have two sites in France. This will also give us the context about France. At this time, we have one MPA established. This is the size of the MPA. We have the coverage for Macedonia inside and the MPA. We can also filter on the site itself. For example, Spain, there's only one site. We can have the MPA established, also one. The size, how many eco-moorings are in place. We can also understand the pressures on that site, solutions, the funding, the challenges. And as I mentioned before, we can also access the site data that will give us a deeper understanding on how everything is being implemented and so on. And the network has also the possibility to download the data for future analysis and a future presentation. So for regarding time management, I started recently, basically. I started this month and the beginning of this month. And since the beginning of this month until this day, I developed the survey, distributed the survey, created the dashboard, it's online. And for this part of June, I'm gonna be analyzing, compiling the data and cleaning the data. For July, I'm also going to be having parallel activities. For example, I'm going to be meeting with different stakeholders to understand the implementation of the mooring systems they are doing, and so on. Of course, literature review about not only eco-mooring solutions, but also the regulations that are implementing. And at the end of July until August, I'm going to be finalizing the report to have concrete results. So financial aspect, at this point, there's no financial strategy in place for the MPN, but it's currently under development. I cannot disclose more information about this, but it's under development, and hopefully by August, I will have some details and be authorized to speak more about it. So it's going to be mainly in the report. So let's talk about risks. This matrix will allow us to understand the highest risks and the least impactful risks. For the sake of time, I'm going to be tackling two main points. Stakeholders are not willing to share information due to different kinds of reasons. It can be confidentiality. It can be lack of availability to share that information. We have duration for the project is not enough to have concrete results. I only started since this month, and I'm going to be finalizing in August. So hopefully by then I will have enough results to be able to have enough details in the report, but also that is linked to how many data I can get from the different stakeholders I'm meeting and the different surveys they have submitted. And also I want to focus on this point, non-English literature, because as I mentioned, there's a lot of stakeholders involved. We have Arabic-speaking countries, the literature is going to be in Arabic. We have Croatia, for example, it's going to be in Croatian. So to translate this literature into English and to have the understanding is going to take a little bit of time. Yeah. So lastly, for the impact, this allows me to build connections with local, regional, and international stakeholders and actors. Exposure to new sustainable solutions, for example, like eco-moorings and the types of eco-moorings implemented. Expand my knowledge in marine conservation, focusing on Macedonia. And lastly, and I think it's one of the most important, sense of purpose and fulfillment. We all started this career for a reason, for our love in the ocean. So being part of this team gives me this fulfillment. So I'm very grateful for that. And to finalize, of course, I want to thank the MARRES team, and special thank you for Frederic that allowed me to have this opportunity and under his guidance and supervision and mentorship. So thank you everyone for listening, and I'll be taking your questions.
Thank you, Hasan, for sharing this initial project plan. That's true that the situation is particular as you're starting when the others are finishing. That's life.
Yeah, starting a bit late, but yeah.
So who would like to start? You decide.
I can start.
You can start?
Yeah.
Allez.
So thank you, Hasan, for this presentation. Perhaps my first question is, how did you develop the survey? How many questions were there? Is it like just short answer question, long questions? Or?
Okay, so basically there's very little open questions. It's only 2 questions. It's about describing, the open question is about why do you require funds for the site? That's one example. But most of the question is just about single selection or multiple selection. For example, the pressures, the implementation, and so on. So I designed the survey and the dashboard, for that matter, using ArcGIS. So it's designed by ESRI. It's an international company for GIS access. And to create the survey, you need to code. So it took me a lot of coding time to develop the survey, but yeah, it was a success.
Okay, and in your opinion, then, what can be the limitation of the answers you got?
Limitations for the answers. From what I've seen from the current answers that we have right now, people are not contributing enough to the survey. Okay. So, and you can understand some parts of it, like they don't understand it. Although I sent multiple emails regarding that, and we had multiple meetings regarding that. So there's a bit of limitation regarding that matter. So most probably for my next move, I'm gonna have another meeting just to make sure everyone will be filling the survey and filling it correctly, because it will affect the outcome of the data and the results.
Because when I'm saying that, is just because you have the Posidonia coverage. Yep. Do you think they have this really exact number, or do you think it's estimation that they give you? How can you try to be sure in a way, or how can you compare the numbers they are giving you?
That's a good question. So for all the stakeholders who send the survey, I'm going to be meeting up with them, having individual one-on-one meetings, and going on more details into the survey. So, and most, it was not here, but most of the survey answers that I got were also established by MPAs. So to establish the MPA, you need to also have a management plan. And most of them have management plans. So to have a management plan, you need proper organization and proper mapping of everything. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. Perhaps last, and then I can come back. But also, at some point, you say you were supposed to clean the data.
Yep.
What do you mean by that?
Clean the data is basically just making sure everything is correctly filled as it should be. Like, as you mentioned, like the coverage of Macedonia, for example, is this the accurate number are you giving, or is it just an assumption? So cleaning data is basically just making sure all the data is correctly inputted, so we can have a concrete result at the end.
So the main answer you got until now, is it from MP manager, or is it really from random?
From random, not MPA managers, like not only MPA managers. Yeah.
You have kind of an idea of the distribution of answers you got?
What do you mean?
By type of
not really, no. I don't have this answer.
Continue.
Oui.
Thank you. Do you have some example of restoration action or eco-marine action already worked?
Yes, there's one of, I mean, it's on the dashboard, but it's in Spain. So one of the eco-moorings established are in Spain, but currently for for this data only, we have one site that has eco-moorings, and we have another site that has a restoration project.
What type of restoration project?
It's only plantation.
Plantation?
Yeah.
And
They're focusing on plantation. And one of the publications MPN made around like 2 weeks ago, it's the restoration guideline, restoration guideline for plantation of Macedonia. So we have everything there. So if anyone wants to create this kind of project, they have access to the guidelines and they can implement it.
okay. Can you tell me some example of invasive species?
So for the invasive species, it's basically another type of seagrass that does not allow Macedonia to grow as it should be, and it will overcome Macedonia. To be honest, I forgot its name, but it's a type of seagrass.
The seagrass?
It's a seagrass.
You are sure about that?
Yep, it's a type of seagrass.
Can be a seaweed.
Maybe a seaweed?
Seaweed also is a possibility. I mean, there's multiple species, so yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for working that out.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not a specialist here.
Yes, yeah. To better understand the restoration project and the conservation issues, you really need to doing a pretty accurate reviewing literature about the biological issue of the Posidonia.
Right.
Maybe it's very helping for for global comprehensive.
Yeah, of course. I'm not a marine biologist, but there's a lot of scientists involved in the network. So there's a lot of give and take, and publications are also online on the MPN website that will help you understand how to restore or how to preserve this kind of habitat. So
Yeah, no worries on serious mention.
Okay, no worries.
We know that you're not.
yeah, I know, but I'm just
It's good that you point that you're communicating.
Exactly. Thank you.
Come back to you later, Florence. Hello. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation, Hasan. I'm going to start by following up on some of Kristal's questions regarding the dashboard. So if I understood correctly, all the data that you have for this dashboard came from the surveys?
correct.
Have you considered what kind of complementary data could help enhance the dashboard, whether that's data for Posidonia coverage, or because you mentioned the fact that the people who fill in the survey might not be sure. Have you thought about complementary, maybe more scientific sources of data that could help enhance this dashboard?
Yes, I mean, so the dashboard is basically just fed from the surveys. So this dashboard will be automatically updated when anyone can fill the survey. But to have a closer look and to have more details, as I mentioned for Kristal, I'm going to be having one-on-one meetings just to make sure that all the information are there, all the information are correctly inputted. And if it's not for a certain reason, I can modify the information so everything can be correctly done on the dashboard.
Okay. Okay, great. And so, yeah, another question, I guess, kind of an important question, unless I might have missed a crucial piece of information, but what is exactly, you call this a feasibility study? You're checking the feasibility of what exactly?
To have the understanding of how to establish a successful eco-mooring project in the Med for 10 different countries. So
Okay.
to establish that, we need to understand, of course, the pressures, we need to understand the regulations, and we need to understand the funding sources. So we can have an effective eco-mooring strategy.
Okay, so the focus being on eco-moorings, but you're still collecting, because we were talking about restoration, you were checking if there was restoration projects as well. Is that just complementary information on the side?
Exactly, correct. This is only complementary. I'm not going to be focusing on restoration. I'm just going to be focusing on the eco-mooring strategy solution.
Okay, cool. And then if you could show the pie chart again with the different types of the breakdown of who's filled out the survey. This one, thanks. Sorry, not filled out the survey, the different members.
Yeah.
So I was actually wondering, so the private sector has a very small percentage, 2% only. There's another category with two other categories with very small percentages. What type of sectors are these?
Honestly, this was from the MPN data. And this was the presentation of the data. These small stakeholders, I'm not really sure. I don't want to give an answer that I'm not exactly sure of. But I mean, this network is big. It has a lot of different stakeholders from different sectors. So it can be one of the multiple sectors.
Okay. And in the private sector, do you know if the MPN is trying to increase this representation or, and if so, what kind of actions are imagined to do this?
So basically, how much the success of the MPN is how much we can reach different stakeholders and allow the stakeholders to contribute more. So the more people we have in the network, the better. And so regarding private sector can be the different companies, like for example, consultancies. It can be the eco-mooring providers, because they are basically companies, and so on. But again, establishing a bigger network is always a plus. So,
do you have any ideas of how you could engage? For example, in the private sector, it's nautical activities are the main kind of representation. Do you have an idea of how you could attract these kind of stakeholders? What kind of methods of stakeholder engagement could work?
I think one of the main things is to attract stakeholders from the private sector is social responsibility. That's one. And two, sustainable implementation of different projects. So when you have sustainable solutions, basically. So when you want to implement a project, you need equipments, you need different entities, so you can establish some things. For example, the eco-mooring. So you need the buoys, you need the handlers, you need concrete, you need a lot of things. So the private sector is there to establish and allow you to have access to this kind of resources.
Okay. Do I have time for one more question, Christophe, or is that?
Yes, we have time for a few more questions.
Okay, great. I was also wondering about the maps. It was really nice to start with the distribution maps to kind of get an idea of where on the Mediterranean we can find Posidonia. You mentioned that there is no evidence of Posidonia in Lebanon and Egypt and Syria. Do you know if this is because there's no data or because there's no Posidonia?
Well, because there's basically no data, no historical data, no current data that tells there are presence of Posidonia in these regions. So it's as simple as that. And because I'm Lebanese and I dove almost all over the coast of Lebanon and I've never seen Posidonia. So, yeah, exactly.
So there's no date, there is data of absence of Posidonia.
Exactly, 100%.
Okay. Great, thanks. That was my only clarification. Thank you.
I will go that way. As a follow-up question on that, on this map. This map is dated back to 2015, so it's 10 years ago. You're clearly the local person in Lebanon, but recently I thought I read or heard about Tyre Coast, so Sur.
Tyre Coast?
Tyre Coast. So you say Sur, at the south of Lebanon.
South of Lebanon?
Yeah. So the MPA that you have in south of Lebanon.
Okay. For the turtle MPA, right?
Sorry. So turtle, I don't know if there are turtles. I guess. Yeah. It's a region where
it's in here.
But isn't it that you have Posidonia there? Seagrass?
No. There's no evidence of that. This MPA, it's basically for turtle conservation.
Yeah.
But there's no evidence of Posidonia. Posidonia is not related to that.
Okay.
Can I follow up on Christophe's question?
Yep.
Do you know why there's no Posidonia on that side of the Mediterranean, or why there's less?
Honestly, I'm not sure, but we have different conditions in that region, and definitely there's a lot of more pollution than the west of the Med. So I guess pollution plays a huge role. And as I mentioned, there's no historical data and evidence of having Posidonia in that area. So there's no proper answer. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Do you have more questions on your side?
Oh, perhaps just curiosity also.
I know you have curiosity.
Oh, yeah. No, it's just what do you know about the eco-mooring situation in France already?
In France, France is currently highly active on eco-mooring. They want to establish a lot of eco-moorings, but to establish any eco-mooring is very political also, because restricting boats from anchoring anywhere is also a tricky thing. So I think there's Corsica has a lot of points for eco-mooring. Also there's another region in France I'm familiar with, but it's only 2 spots that I'm aware of until now, because I'm going to be interviewing different circles to have more info. But until now, I'm familiar with these 2 spots.
And do you do you know the situation, how people are willing to engage with eco-mooring?
What do you mean engage in the eco-mooring?
Well, just like you said.
Acceptance?
Yeah.
Okay. So regarding that part, I believe people are accepting for eco-mooring because they are now more aware of the situation for Posidonia and protecting Posidonia. And if you enforce it with the local stakeholders, with the local government, it will allow you to have no other way just to have the eco-mooring situation.
Remains to be known if the local authorities are ready to engage into that.
Remain what, sorry?
To engage into this enforcement.
Yeah, true. Well, to allow the government to have also acceptance of eco-mooring, we need to present some kind of economic situation for eco-mooring. But not eco-mooring itself, but for protecting Posidonia using eco-mooring.
Yeah. Okay.
There's also Macedonia, it's a 25 to 45 million euros habitat. So protecting it gives a lot of money for the area. So
I think we're all good. Yes, Florence, good for you? Okay, thank you, Hasan. And you can have a look to the screen in front of you. You have also a few hello and even some special message like this one.
thank you, guys.
So thank you. So thank you guys. Exactly. Yes. Thank you for having been here this morning. Thank you, Florence, with the distance. Jean-Vincent, Justine here. And also for all of you, for all your messages online. We really appreciate that. And of course, the students as well. And for you who were here on site, that was great. You share the breakfast with us, or you still have breakfast if you want. Lunch, hein? Allez. Bonne journée à tous. Have a nice day. Bye bye.